One of the biggest problems in today's world is the problem of Israel and Palestine. For more than 70 years, this area has not seen a good turn just because of this problem. To find the roots of this problem, we have to go back in time, of course, a lot. In this program, we neither support Israel nor Palestine, but we want to tell the true story of this region. The judgment is with you. We must go to 1700 years before Christ. That is more than 3700 years ago. In this area, which was called Bani Israel at that time, three prophets named Abraham, Jacob, and Isaac lived in this area, which has called Canaan. We go forward in time and reach 1000 year BC. That is about 3000 years ago, when this Israel has a king named Shaul, who is also called Talut. After Shaul, a person named David became the king of Israel and chose Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. David had a son named Solomon who built the first Jewish temple in Jerusalem, and since then, this temple is known as Solomon's Temple. After the death of Solomon, Israel is divided into two parts. One region is called the Kingdom of Israel with Samaria as its capital, and another region to the south which is called the Kingdom of Judah and the center is Jerusalem. This division starts the first problem of this region. The Jews who lived in this region didn't have a good relationship with their surroundings at all, which means that every empire that arose in the Middle East wanted to destroy them or enslave them, and every country that conquered Jerusalem also destroyed the temple. But when the Jews returned to their city, they rebuilt the temple. We reach Cyrus the Great. This history that we want to tell you is written in the Jewish Torah and the Christian Bible. They had taken them away and destroyed their temple. Cyrus saved them from the Babylonians and provided them with facilities to rebuild their temple. Some people say that this is a story and it is not true. But this story is also mentioned in religious books of Jews and Christians. Achaemenid Empire ends. Parthians come to power in Iran, and on the other side, in Europe, the Roman Empire is being formed and its power is increasing day by day. And it's coming to the east. Finally, in 63 BC, the Romans completely took over the Mediterranean Sea and Israel fell into the hands of the Roman Empire. The Romans didn't like the Jews, so they immediately changed the name of this region to Palestine. What does Palestine mean now? Palestine comes from the Greek word Philistus, which they call this region, and the Romans chose the name the Greek gave to this region because they did not like the Jews. The Romans didn't enslave the Jews, but they didn't help them, not even allow them to do normal things. For example, to farm or having a shop. That's why Jews fall into the business of money. They put their money on top of each other and formed a bank and gave loans to those who had financial problems. And that was because they were not allowed to do normal things. With their own hands, they turned all the Jews into the bankers and money changers. And those who, for example, did ordinary work when they needed money, they borrowed from them. Since then, the idea is formed that Jews are rich. Also known that the Romans expelled them from Palestine and they were spread in Europe and West Asia. Several centuries pass and Christianity becomes more powerful day by day. And Christ was born in Palestine and his crucifixion also happened in Jerusalem. At this time, Jerusalem became a holy area for Christians. We reached the 7th century. Muslims attacked Iran and also defeated Byzantium, and Palestine come under the control of Muslims. You should know that Jerusalem is also holy for Muslims because it was the first Qibla of Muslims. But in 264 AD, the Qibla is changed to Mecca. When the Muslims conquered Jerusalem, they built a mosque there called Aqsa Mosque or Quds. And after this, the city becomes holy for true religious. Islam, Judaism, and Christianity. After the collapse of ancient Rome, the Jews in Europe were persecuted more than before because the Christians blamed the Jews and said they caused Christ to be crucified. We reached the 16th century when the Ottomans occupied this region. The Ottomans did not persecute the Jews at all, and they lived comfortably in the Ottomans. However, most of the Jews' population was in Europe at the end of the 19th century. European Jews, who are called the Ashkenazi Jews, united and formed a movement called Zionism and set the goal of the movement to liberate the land of Israel. At the beginning of the 20th century, 10,000 European Jews immigrated to Jerusalem, which was part of the Ottoman Empire at that time. A few years after this great immigration, the First World War will begin. At the end of this war, the Ottoman Empire will completely disintegrate, and most of its land fell into the hands of the British, and some of it fell into the hands of France and Russia. In this area, the British first created three countries: Kuwait, Iraq, and Jordan. They removed the name of Palestine and called it Jordan, and the one piece that is now in Israel's hands, they call it British Mandate for Palestine. The Muslims who were in this area were much more numerous than the Jews who had just arrived from Europe. That is why in 1926 the tension between Jews and Muslims began. In 1933, Hitler comes to power in Germany and decides to expel the Jews from Germany. He realizes that the strongest group among European Jews is the group called Zionists. So he made an agreement with them according to which 60,000 German Jews had to leave Germany and go to Palestine. In 1937, the British, who were enemies of Hitler and had Palestine under their control, did not accept this agreement and did not allow the Zionists to enter Palestine, and Hitler failed to expel the Jews. 2 years later, the Second World War began, and the Nazi Party said that all our misfortunes were because of the Jews. And we all know what happened after that. In 1947, 2 years after the end of World War II, the United Nations wanted to divide Palestine into two parts because the population of Palestine Jews, who called themselves Zionists, had grown very quickly and there was always conflict between them. The United Nations wanted to divide Palestine into two parts to end these conflicts. An Arab state and a Jewish state were to be formed, and Jerusalem was to be declared an international zone to prevent conflicts between these regions. The Palestinians strongly opposed this UN idea, saying that all of Palestine belongs to them. A year later, in 1948, British left Palestine, and at the same time, the Zionists, who had gained a great power, said that this was Israel, not Palestine, as in ancient time. A civil war begins, and all the surrounding countries support Palestine, and a war begins between the Arabs and the Zionists. But Israel defeats them all and forces them to retreat, and the Palestinians gather in the West Bank and some in the Gaza Strip. After the Zionists came to power, more than 750,000 Palestinians were expelled from this land and forced to go to other countries. Tensions between Arabs and Jews increased day by day, so much so that in 1967 a war broke out between all Arab countries and Israel, known as the 6 Days War. The Arabs had nothing to say against Israel and were badly defeated in this war. Of course, Israel was fully supported by Western countries, but after these 6 days, it completely occupied the Sinai Desert from Egypt and the West Bank, and also took the Golan Heights from Syria. After the 6 Days War, more Palestinians were expelled, and on the other hand, many Jews from around the world immigrated to Israel. Since that year, these conflicts have continued, and there is always a plan to divide the land into two parts. But the Israelis believe that this land is their ancestral land and belongs to them, and they want more of it, and they do not want to Jerusalem to be divided in half. After 2007, the Palestinians were divided into two groups, one in the West Bank and a smaller group in the Gaza Strip. In the Gaza Strip, we have a group called Hamas, whose sole goal is the destruction of Israel and say it will not make deal with the Zionist regime. In 2018, US President Donald Trump made the United States the first country to move its embassy to Jerusalem, a move that greatly injured Arabs. Unfortunately, this war continues today and more people are killed every day. We hope that this war will end as soon as possible and peace will be established. Please support us with your subscribe, like, and comments.